day in Partha with no end to old Dyson's task. It was not that he could not sense the forces stirring within most of those who came to him, but that their progress, beyond that, did not leap forward, as his, and even Lila's, had done, mystified old Dyson.
It shows that you are even more special, my love, as I already knew.
She cooed.
But give it a few more days. I think you will begin to see what you desire.
I'm glad you think so, he returned morosely. I also appreciate it since I know you weren't happy when we found ourselves here instead of nearly in Ketchen.
I am, if nothing else, very adaptable, Gerald Dyson. I have been forced to be.
Old Dyson would have questioned her remark, but when he looked at her again, it was to discover that Lila had just drifted off to sleep. A few minutes later, he fell asleep too, for the next few hours happily relieved of his concerns. The noblewoman's predictions came to pass. Barely 2 days later. By this time, old Dyson had touched nearly everyone in town. There were astonishingly few people hesitant about waking the gift within themselves, and fewer yet that he could deny. It was Master Ethan who suggested those who should be forbidden time with old Dyson. They were criminals, all the most suspicious and untrustworthy. As lead justice of the Parthian tribunal, the merchant knew most of them by face. He made certain to stand by old Dyson once he knew what was happening. "That man there," Ethan declared. "Beware of giving him anything." He then pointed to another. "He likely slit your throat while you greet him, so watch that one too." In the beginning, old Dyson had dutifully obeyed, but on this day he saw again the first man in question, an unsavory bearded soul by the name of Aramis. A wicked scar ran across a good portion of his bald pate, a result, no doubt, of his nefarious activities. The moment that Aramis saw that he in turn was being observed, he started to leave. However, old Dyson suddenly decided that he wanted to speak with the disreputable figure. "Aramis! Aramis! Come to me!" Hundreds of pairs of eyes fixed on Aramis. He had no choice but to step forward, despite scowls from the town guard and many others. Master Ethan, too, was not pleased. "Old Dyson, I know you mean well, lad, but such as him would be more of a danger if given the gift." Lila put a soft hand to the merchant's arm.
But dear Ethan, how do you know that some others like Romas have not already received old Dyson's aid? Can you claim to know every villain to walk Partha?
"No, my lady, but I know a damn lot. Pardon my saying so, and this one's among the worst." She would not be dissuaded.
Have you seen the faces of those who have been awakened? You yourself have experienced it too. Look deep. Do you think you could ever use it for ill?
Ethan faltered. "No, never. But..."
No one could.
Lila insisted,
No one could.
not bothering to wait to see what his host might say next. Old Dyson reached for Aramis, who looked less like a threat and more like a frightened child. The bald man was surrounded by a good many townfolk who considered old Dyson something of a holy figure. "Don't be afraid," said old Dyson to the crowd. He added, "Give him some room, it's all right." As they obeyed, the son of Demedes drew him closer. Romus frowned but let himself be guided, still at Master Ethan's side. Lila leaned forward, her gaze intent. The rest of the townsfolk watched warily, Romus's reputation apparently well known. They were ready to defend Old-Dyson if anything happened. But Old-Dyson himself had no such fears. The moment that he touched the other man's hands, the force within him surged forward. Old-Dyson immediately felt it stir something within Romus. The bald man gasped, and a look of wonder spread across his face. That made him look like a completely different person, one whom Old-Dyson would have trusted with his life. It's... Romus stammered. Yes, it is. Dyson stepped back, as ever giving the person a chance to come to grips with the change themselves. Romus chuckled like a child, and a tear slid down his cheek. With both hands he rubbed the top of his head as he tried to comprehend. As the hands came away, Lila abruptly called,
Old-Dyson, see what he's done? Look at the scar.
Old-Dyson could not look at it, for it no longer existed. The skin where once the jagged cut had lain was now as healthy as a pink, and as that on Jonas's restored face. And it had not been because of any effort by Old-Dyson. That was not immediately apparent to the townsfolk, who applauded this latest work as his. Quickly raising his hands high, Old-Dyson waited for the crowd to quiet, then shouted, "What you see was nothing of my doing. None at all. What you see before you, the miracle you witnessed, Romus did himself." When cries of denial arose, he grew more stern. "I say this and I know this. Who here would call me false? No one there could." Many began looking in amazement at Romus, who shook his head over and over, trying to deny the truth as much as his neighbors had a moment before, but Old-Dyson would not let him. "Romus, come join me here by the fountain. Let the others see." Wordlessly the bearded man obeyed. Others crowded forward, murmuring to one another and pointing at the healed area. Romus began to turn a deep shade of crimson. There was nothing about him that looked like a hardened criminal Master Ethan had first identified. "Uncanny," muttered the merchant from the background. "Is it possible?" Lila clutched their host's arm tight.
It is.
She breathed to Ethan.
Do you understand now?
Yes, I suppose I do." Meanwhile, Dyson had gathered the people's attention again. "It may be some time before anything manifests again, but you see now what is possible. Let no doubt that everyone will be able to do the same, and more." That was enough to send the throng into a roar. Many fell to their knees and thanked Old-Dyson, who looked extremely upset by this reaction. Get up! He insisted. His fury shook his followers. They stared fearfully. He did not care. They had to understand. "No one bows to me. I'm no king, no patriarch of a mage clan. I was and still am a simple farmer. My land, my home, may be lost to me, but that's what I remain, even with what I've been granted. I offer to share, not command. Never ever kneel to me again. There are no masters here, only equals." Even as we said this, Old-Dyson knew that they did not entirely see it that way. They would look to him for answers, for direction. He consoled himself with the thought that he acted as teacher, as guide. One day soon, most would no longer need him. There was even the possibility that some would surpass Old-Dyson, and that he in turn would have to learn from them. For the time being, though, it was all up to him. Romus startling act, though, gave him a renewed hope. Each person was individual. For the time being, though, it was all up to him. Romus's startling act, though, gave him renewed hope. Each person was individual. As a farmer, he understood now how growth varied. All he had to do was be more patient. He had the time. Ketchin was not expecting him. He could stay here until he was certain. That would make it all the better when he did present himself to the inhabitants of the city. Feeling better about matters, old Dyson turned to the next supplicant. And the next. And the next. Malik was being more cautious this time. Not because he felt any concern about facing old Dyson, but because he wanted the mission to go very cleanly. The Morlu could be a double-edged sword in some respects. They were very capable, but their tendency for bloodshed almost rivaled that of demons. Fortunately, the Master had chosen a capable servant in Deimos, and Deimos had chosen well in his 5 warriors. Collectively, they were a far more potent force than the demons and guards that the cleric had led previously. Deimos even now stalked ahead of the party, sniffing the air like a beast on the scent. The other Morlu sat eagerly in the saddle, awaiting word of the prey.
This way they came.
Gritted Deimos. He raised his ram skull helmet up to the sky and sniffed again.
And in this place, they turned that way.
Malik's gaze followed the outthrust arm. Are you certain? The lead Morlu grinned, revealing sharp, yellowed teeth.
I smell the blood, High Priest.
They were heading toward Kedjan. When last I encountered them, they were well on their way to the lowlands and the jungles. Veering off in that direction means an extreme detour. Deimos shrugged. To his kind, such considerations were unnecessary. All that mattered was where the prey could be found, not what direction it had run before the hunt. The cleric stroked his monstrous arm, a motion that had, in the short time since the transformation, made an unconscious habit. The clawed fingers twitched. Just before the party had left, the master had finally told him what the hand can do. Malik was now eager to try it, but to do that he had to reach his quarry. We go that way then, the high priest finally declared. Grunting, Deimos returned to his dark steed. That following the trail was what they needed to do was very obvious to all the Morlu, but they knew their pace and so did not make anything of the cleric's unnecessary comment. The high priest could send them to their deaths if he so desired, so long as it served the temple. They would not question his leadership unless commanded to by the master. With Malik in the lead, the band rode on at a furious clip. Curiously, their mounds left no trails of their own, and, indeed, even the clatter of hoofs was missing. Had there been any other person there to witness their passing, they might have noticed that the hooves did not even quite touch the ground. Night settled again upon the town of Partha. An exhausted old Dyson fell into his bed. He barely noticed Lila sliding beside him before sleep overtook the farmer. Dreams soon invaded his slumber, pleasant interludes in which he was able to help the sick and maimed everywhere, learn how to heal themselves, or bring burnt lands back to bloom. Old Dyson watched the world become a paradise and its people reach a point of perfection undreamed. Then, in the midst of the harmony and love, calamity broke out. Fissures opened in the ground, and even the sky developed cracks. It was as if his home was hidden inside a vast egg, now being broken open by something outside. And in the next breath, the heavens filled with fiery, winged figures, and from the fissures rose monstrous scaled hordes. The two fearsome armies immediately collided with one another, with humanity caught in the middle. Men, women, and children were torn to bloody gobbets by the unnoticing warriors of both sides. Thousands lay strewn dead in an instant. "Stop!" Old Dyson roared. "Stop!" None of the combatants paid heed to his cries, and when he sought to use his gifts to make them listen, nothing happened. "They're all over us!" shouted Achilles, suddenly at his side. "Do something! I'm almost out of arrows!" Indeed, the archer had apparently managed to bring down nearly 100 of the fighters, but still the tide flowed toward where Old Dyson and he stood. "This is your fault!" Achilles insisted, growing angry. "Your fault!" "No!" Old Dyson whirled from the hunter, and his accusations, only to find Saranthina gazing at him from afar. She stood surrounded by a sea of furious warriors, oblivious of the surmounting threat to her. Blades already slashed past her head, but all Cyrus's daughter did was continue to stare at Old Dyson, as so many in the audience had this day. "I have faith in you," she declared. "I do." An axe already scarred from heavy use nearly severed her head. Blood poured forth like a fountain from an open neck. As Saranthina's head toppled over, Old Dyson saw that the look of trust yet remained. "Sari!" he choked. Old Dyson tried to push forward, but a hand suddenly pulled him back. He looked at the one preventing him from reaching her, and discovered it to be none other than his own brother, but a Mendelin of the likes which made him shiver. "Do not worry about her anymore," the cadaverous figure intoned without emotion. Mendelin's face was drawn and gray, and he seemed half shadow. A dark cloak surrounded him, a cloak that twisted and turned despite no apparent wind. "Do not worry about her anymore. She's one of mine now." Only then did Old Dyson see that there were figures behind Mendelin, faces he recognized from both Partha and Sarum. However, they, like Mendelin, had drawn faces, and when he looked close, jagged wounds and torn flesh. They were all dead. Having made his declaration, Mendelin drifted past Old Dyson as if a shade himself. In his wake, the corpses of the innocent rose to follow. The fighting separated around Saranthina's body, which still stood despite its death. Mendelin gestured at the torso, also turned to join him. "Wait!" called Achilles, leaping forward. Throwing down his bow, he seized Saranthina's bleeding head and rushed after Mendelin. "Wait!" Old Dyson attempted to follow, but for him the battling legions would not make room. The winged warriors and their bestial adversaries pressed tight against one another. Yet despite heavy losses on both sides, the numbers seemed undiminished. An endless flow of replacements continued to come, filling the world to overflowing. There was no longer even a hint of the paradise that had once stood all around Old Dyson. The ground was a blazing slaughterhouse, the sky burnt and smoke-ridden. Then, when he had nearly given up hope, he heard Lila's voice call to him. Desperately, he looked around for her, at last spotting the noblewoman, her finery gleaming, gliding toward him from across the carnage. The battle did not touch Lila in the least. In fact, the combatant seemed eager to be out of her way. She ran directly into old Dyson's arms, holding him as tight as he held her. "Lila," he gasped, relieved beyond belief. "Lila, I thought I lost you too." "But you will never be without me, my love. Never," she cooed, holding him tighter yet. Her face was planted in his chest. "We are bound to each other forever." Grateful, old Dyson leaned down to kiss her. Lila raised her face to his. Choking, he tried in vain to disengage from the noblewoman, but Lila's embrace was unbreakable. Old Dyson stared in horror as her mouth moved closer to his.
"Will you not kiss me, my love?"
she asked with a smile filled with sharp teeth. Her eyes had no pupils, merely a sinister shade of crimson covering the entire area under the lids. Her skin was scaled, and her ears beneath her hair long and pointed. That hair still hung long, but now consisted of harsh quills colored emerald green. Despite the macabre changes, there was that about her that still filled old Dyson with desire, a desire so deep that it frightened him. The grand dress that she had worn was gone, utterly gone, and although similar scales covered her flesh, they did not hide what the human garments had often hinted of. "No!" he blurted, shoving her back with all his might. "No!" Lila laughed at his antics. Her tail, which ended in 3 dagger-like projections, slapped merrily against the bloody soil. She took a step back on hooved legs, like those of the goats old Dyson had kept on the farm, and displayed herself fully for his wide eyes.
"Am I not everything you dreamed of? Am I not all you desire?"
The demonic woman laughed again, and even though that laugh sent chills through the hapless farmer, it also heightened his desire for her.
"Come, my love.
Lila continued, her clawed hands inviting him toward her.
Come. You are mine. Body and soul. Soul and body. Come to me."
As she said this, the army suddenly halted their struggle and turned to face old Dyson. They marched slowly toward him, their steps marching the rhythm of Lila's voice.
Soul. Soul and body. Body and...
With a wordless cry, old Dyson woke up. He twisted to find Lila stretched over him, her face, beautiful face, filled with concern.
"Well, Dyson, my love, are you ill?"
I saw all the others, you. I dreamed. It's nothing. Just a bad dream.
"A nightmare?"
She reached a smooth, unclawed hand to his cheek. Old Dyson instinctively flinched, recalling her appearance in the vision.
And what a horrible nightmare it must have been. It makes you so afraid of me.
I'm sorry. She shook her head. Their lips met and stayed where they were. The last vestiges of the dream faded. When old Dyson again slept, it was in a mood that could only bring him enjoyable dreams, not nightmares. But Lila did not sleep. She stared without blinking at some place in her own memory, a place far from where they were now. There were many among humanity who believed that dreams were portents, and Lila knew that they were not far from the truth. Dreams could be portents. She knew that better than most. Yes, dreams could be portents, and there was the possible aspect to old Dyson's. However, there was another reason for him, one that concerned Lila far more. Dreams and nightmares, especially, could be warnings too. Lila knew just what those warnings concerned. What she did not know was the source. She had done her utmost to veil her presence to those who would recognize it. To be sure, they now had to have their suspicions, but they too had to tread carefully. To not do so would reveal the entire situation to the high heavens. No one, not even he, desired them to discover Sanctuary's existence, which still left her at the advantage, at least as far as she could see. But this dream continued to disturb her. It did not sound like an attempt by any of those who would seek to prevent her from fulfilling her goal. Yet what else could it be?